The question of whether or not a story will live or die is mostly dependent on its writing. Whether it's about a cold-hearted and manipulative politician trying to gain and maintain power, or a teenager trying to fight off evil sorcerers in a school for wizards and witches. If the writing isn't up to scratch, people will just drop it like a rock. This is especially relevant for literature, a medium literally built around words written on a page. But I think people often forget that, as important as the words you write are, and when and why you use them, what matters just as much is how you present them. You see, humans are primarily visual creatures. We are built to rely mostly on our vision, and for the most part, seeing a picture or video of something is going to be easier to process than a short description of the same thing. Writing literature has many of its own benefits, of course, such as practically giving full control of the piece to the writer and letting them dive deeper into detail about a character's thoughts, personality, and backstory, but when compared to visual mediums, it always feels like it has to try and catch up. And it can easily accomplish this by giving the reader the illusion of a visual, such as instead of saying a character walked into a room, deciding to say a character stormed into a room, giving the situation not only a different tone but also implying the movement of the character. But this only covers the basics, as how you lay out your composition can give just as much visual feedback to the reader as the words themselves. It's what I like to call visual writing because, well, I'll be honest, I'm just not sure if there's an actual term for it. It is when a writer manipulates the structure and layout of their writing to add meaning to it. This can most obviously be seen in poetry, where every little detail of a piece is designed to do just that. For example, Seamus Heaney's Midterm Break, a poem about a young boy being taken out of boarding school for a funeral, ends with the final line being left out on its own. After following a fairly regular 3-line pattern for most of the poem, this jarring break in structure hits you hard and heightens the emotional impact as you start to fully take in the situation at hand. As well, in Emily Dickinson's I Felt a Funeral in My Brain, in which she imagines her own, well, funeral, she describes herself falling down and down as she slips deeper and deeper into death, until she finally finished knowing, then. By ending the poem on a dash, it leaves the reader wondering what this then is supposed to imply. Is it supposed to be a reference to the finality of death, that there's nothing afterward? Or does it imply that there's still more to her tale, that she does in fact find an afterlife of some sort? These are just two examples of poets using the layout and structure of their craft to emphasize a theme or message, but these aren't the only ones. There's an entire form of poetry dedicated to this kind of thing, called shape or concrete poetry, where the poem is written in such a way as to create a shape or pattern on the page to give the work an extra layer of depth. However, I feel like I'm getting a little off topic here. I want to focus on how the visual layout of one's writing can aid the narrative of any form of literature, not just poetry. It's just that it's hard to find many examples of a writer applying this technique to a book or novel. At least that's what I thought until I looked at the work of Landy. Landy is an Irish writer most well known for his fantasy series Skulduggery Pleasant. His stories often feel like a strange mix of genres, somehow managing to include elements of comedy, horror, action, mystery, and even a touch of romance without feeling clumsy. His writing style is fast-paced and packed with detail, full of snappy banter between interestingly strange characters and fantastic imagery. And although it doesn't come up often, he has made effective use of visual writing in his work, such as in The Dying of the Light. Oh, spoilers by the way. In the climactic tale of Skulduggery Pleasant's original 9 books, we see the main protagonist, Valkyrie Kane, try to stop her dark side, Darkess, from destroying the world. Edgy, I know, but believe me, it's good. To do this, she enlists the help of 2 former villains and 2 of the most powerful sorcerers in existence, Melancholia and Lord Vile. These 2 beat down Darkess and are about to tear it to shreds when she unleashes a ferocious blast of magical energy that destroys everything. The silver light exploded outwards and consumed the world. It swallowed Vile and Melancholia. A deafening rush of air, the world filled with fragments, bricks and masonry and glass and wood and metal. Valkyrie thrown, tossed and spun. Buildings torn down, folded like paper. Streets crumpled. Lampposts snapped. And then everything was silent. These 4 pages come just before what's known as the hero's low point, which, in terms of narrative structure, is where it seems as though the main character will ultimately fail their goal. In this case, Valkyrie's goal to stop Darkess. By presenting short, broken lines that have words and letters scattered across the page that you're not fully sure which order to read them in, it not only reflects the violent power of this explosion, but it also prepares the reader for the shitstorm that's about to come, as Valkyrie watches Darkess destroy everything she cares about. Even the way the chapters are laid out reflects the importance of this event. Each of these chapters are only one page. Though they are incredibly short, by giving these few lines their own chapters, it gives them a huge amount of room to stand out. Even chapter 82 and 83, in which Valkyrie gets back on her feet and sees the aftermath of the explosion, are only about a paragraph each. These chapters and what happens in them, the explosion, Melancholy and Vile being vaporized, the ensuing destruction, and then the crippling silence afterwards, have a huge impact on the story, and the way these chapters are laid out visually makes that abundantly clear. But if Dying of the Light uses the visual presentation of its writing to disturb the reader and prepare them for the hero's defeat, then American Monsters is practically its antithesis, using visual writing to hype them up and prepare them for the hero's victory. This is another novel by Landy, the last of his Demon Road trilogy, a story about a girl named Amber discovering she's a demon and being hunted across America by her cannibalistic demon family. I want to focus specifically on chapter 42 of American Monsters, by which point most of her friends are dead and her love interest has been kidnapped by her parents, and all hope seems lost, until she hatches a plan to turn the tables on them. But before she can do that, she has a few loose ends to tie up. This comes just after the hero's low point, as things are starting to ramp up toward the conclusion. Landy wrote the short sequences of Amber exacting justice upon all sorts of horrific demons and murderers with short, precise and snappy paragraphs, interspersed between the sound of her using the key of a serial killer that lets her teleport through doorways to any door in the world. These short descriptions start to quicken the pace and give the reader the impression that Amber is more than capable of defeating her parents. And with the speed you get through them and how most of the key turns are placed just before you turn a page, it gives it an almost cinematic effect, making it feel like a montage from an action movie as Amber and Milo dole out justice in the best way they know how. For example, I met you about 3 weeks ago. You were, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but you were acting kind of drunk? Miss Paget raised an eyebrow. We don't drink, so I don't think it was up. You had red skin and horns, Amber continued. And you'd just eaten your son? It was around then. They stared at her, giving Milo plenty of time to walk up behind them and put a bullet in each of their brains before they had a chance to shift. The Catching Z's motel was open for business, but at this time of night, there was no one in the manager's office. Amber led Milo through the secret door and they found their target in the corridor beyond. He had his snarling surgical mask pushed up to his forehead as he worked on repositioning the camera behind one of the windows. They watched him until he noticed them, and his eyes widened and he tried to run. Milo didn't let him get very far. And so on. This is an amazing piece of visual writing and a clever way to build up a story's ending. For as much as literature relies on words alone to explore various themes and ideas, the way in which these words are presented can convey just as much meaning. From restructuring the layout of your paragraphs and pages to simply letting a line stand by itself, it emphasizes meaning in so many ways that just a simple description could never do. What I'm basically trying to say is, presentation matters. And yeah, those are my thoughts. This was an interesting video to make, I have to say, just because it's so much more heavily reliant on me having to make up visuals instead of just cutting together clips in a kind of interesting way. Hopefully it turns out well. Also, I get to talk about Skulduggery, Pleasant, and Demon Road, so that's also fun. And I get to use some poetry stuff I learned in school. For something. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you're interested, check out my last video where I talk about the deeper meaning and symbolism in Logan, which is actually a re-upload that got blocked, because, you know, Fox. Or if you want a more narrative experience, head to Russian Afroman's channel and keep an eye out for his next Outlichno video, which I may or may not have played a part in. And if you want to see more, then be sure to like, comment, share, and of course, subscribe to come fly with me. And hopefully, I'll see you later.